Do you believe there were once roads paved with dragon silver, where the golden radiance was so brilliant it eclipsed the sun? For thousands of years, the billion-dollar metropolises of the Bible reigned like immortal gods, possessing armies that made the world tremble and treasures vast enough to purchase entire kingdoms. But now, all that remains are heaps of rubble and whispers in the desert wind. Why did walls once vibrating with the music of power, standing 45 meters high, eventually crumble? Why did the rivers that brought life become the very paths that ushered death into the heart of the palace? Prepare yourself for a journey back through time. We are opening the files on the 10 wealthiest cities in history to discover the devastating mistakes that turned dragon gold into ashes. We begin our journey on the Mediterranean coast, in the land of modern-day Lebanon around the 6th century BC. As your ship approaches the port of Tyre, the first thing to hit your senses isn't the grandeur of the palaces, but a pungent, stifling stench thick in the sea breeze. That is the smell of millions of murex mollusks rotting under the sun. In the ancient world, this horrific odor was the scent of money. Tyre held the secret to Tyrian purple, the rarest dye known to humanity. The production process was brutal. Workers had to crush thousands of snails to extract just a few drops of precious liquid. A single cloak dyed in this purple was worth kilograms of solid gold, and its color was so miraculous that the more it was exposed to sunlight, the more brilliant and deep the hue became. Tyre was not just a city. It was a gold foundry built on industrial monopoly. This extreme wealth fostered a boundless arrogance. The Phoenicians of Tyre achieved an engineering marvel. They built their center of power on an island separated from the mainland by about 800 meters. Around this island, they erected towering stone walls, reaching 45 meters high, equivalent to a modern 15-story building. They stood atop those walls, looking down at enemy fleets, and laughed. They believed that as long as the sea surrounded them, they would remain immortal gods of the great deep. But in 332 BC, Alexander the Great arrived. When his request to offer a sacrifice inside the city was rejected, the young king of Macedonia made a decision that changed the world's geography forever. Lacking enough warships for a total blockade, Alexander did the unthinkable. He ordered tens of thousands of soldiers to demolish the entirety of the old mainland city. Millions of tons of stone, timber, and even ancient houses were hurled into the sea to construct a massive causeway stretching straight to the island. The description in Ezekiel 26:12 says, "They will throw your stones, your timber, and your soil into the water." Alexander turned that prophecy into a brutal reality. The Macedonian army marched over the very remains of the old city to storm the new one. After a 7-month siege, Tyre collapsed in blood and fire. Wealth built on an absolute monopoly was wiped out by an iron will that knew no fear. Today, if you look from a satellite, the island of Tyre is gone. Alexander's causeway has accumulated sand over millennia, transforming it into a peninsula, a permanent scar, marking the fall of an empire that once believed it was untouchable. Leaving the Mediterranean coast, we journey deep into the heart of Mesopotamia, the plains of modern-day Iraq. Amidst the arid and dusty landscape, a colossal structure appears, so radiant it can be seen from dozens of kilometers away. It is the Ishtar Gate of Babylon, paved with deep blue glazed bricks and adorned with golden leaf-covered dragons and bulls. Babylon, under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, was a ruthless resource-draining machine. It grew wealthy not just through trade, but by bleeding conquered nations dry. When the Babylonian army swept through Jerusalem, they didn't just take the intellectual elite. They brought back thousands of chests filled with gold, silver, and sacred artifacts from the Temple of God. Babylon's defense system was considered the greatest military wonder of its time. The city walls were double-layered, with a width of up to 8 meters wide, enough for 2 4-horse chariots to pass each other without hindrance. But Babylon's secret weapon was the Euphrates River, which flowed directly through the heart of the city. This provided the residents of Babylon with an inexhaustible supply of water and fish, rendering any siege seemingly pointless. They could bolt the city gates and feast for years without fear of hunger or thirst. However, this absolute sense of security created a fatal flaw in the souls of its rulers. The Book of Daniel describes the final banquet of King Belshazzar. where the king arrogantly used the sacred vessels from the Temple of Jerusalem to drink wine and praise idols of gold. While music and laughter echoed inside the palace, Cyrus, the Great of Persia, was executing a classic geopolitical masterstroke outside. Instead of trying to breach the walls through brute force, Cyrus ordered his engineers to dig a massive system of canals upstream, diverting the entire Euphrates River into a dry lake bed. In a single night, the water level plummeted. The river that served as the city's protective moat suddenly became a dry, muddy path running right under the city gates. The Persian army marched into the heart of Babylon through the riverbed without having to break a single brick of the formidable walls. Babylon, the wealthiest city in the world, collapsed while its leaders were still in a drunken stupor. Arrogance fueled by bank accounts and stone walls had blinded them to the shifting tides of the era. Babylon turned its greatest advantage into its fatal weakness, leaving behind a lesson. You are never more vulnerable than when you are most complacent. Leaving the thick walls of Babylon, we head west to the region of Lydia in modern-day Turkey. Here lies Sardis, a city that, according to ancient historians, derived its wealth not from pillaging or heavy taxation, but as a direct gift from nature. Flowing through the heart of the city was the miraculous Pactolus River. Legend tells that King Midas washed his golden touch hands in this river, causing the sands at the bottom to glitter with gold. The historical and archaeological reality is even more fascinating. The Pactolus River actually carried vast amounts of electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. The people of Sardis simply had to stand by the riverbank and sift their wealth from the water. However, Sardis' greatest contribution to human history was not just raw gold, but its pioneering technology in metallurgy. Archaeologists have excavated the world's oldest refining workshops here, where artisans used salt and high temperatures to separate pure gold from silver on an industrial scale. King Croesus, the legendary monarch of Sardis, leveraged this achievement to invent something that would change the global economy forever: coinage. Instead of having to weigh cumbersome metal ingots, merchants could now carry small coins stamped with the royal seal of guarantee. Sardis became the world's first financial hub, where the citizens grew so wealthy that the idiom "rich as Croesus" still persists after more than 20,500 years. However, confidence in their massive coffers led to overconfidence in their geography. The main part of the city was built atop a sheer, nearly vertical and smooth cliffside. The Lydians believed that no army could ever scale this natural fortress. Yet, history was decided by a singular freak occurrence. A soldier from Sardis accidentally dropped his helmet down the cliff and secretly climbed down a small crevice to retrieve it. A Persian spy witnessed this and noted the route. That night, while the entire Lydian army slept soundly convinced the cliffs would protect them, the Persian troops secretly scaled that very same path and swarmed into the city. Sardis collapsed in just a matter of hours. This is the historical context for the stern warning in the book of Revelation sent to the church there: "If you do not wake up, I will come like a thief." Wealth had paralyzed their vigilance, and the illusion of safety led to an irreversible doom. If Sardis was a symbol of peaceful commerce, then Nineveh, located in modern-day northern Iraq, was a symbol of wealth extracted through sheer terror. As the capital of the fierce Assyrian Empire, Nineveh was the largest city in the world. In the 7th century BICE, the Bible describes Nineveh as a city so vast that it took 3 days of walking just to cross it. Its wealth did not come from production, but from a policy of systematic state terrorism. The Assyrian army was considered the most brutal military force in the ancient world. They imposed massive tributes on neighboring nations. If a kingdom refused, Nineveh would wipe them out and record the atrocities on stone reliefs kilometers long within their palaces to intimidate every visiting envoy. Nineveh used its plundered gold to turn the desert into an artificial paradise. They built a canal system extending over 50 kilometers, featuring massive stone aqueducts to water the most exotic botanical gardens in the world. However, wealth built on blood was cursed by biblical prophets like Jonah and Nahum. The fall of Nineveh occurred exactly as foretold, with chilling precision. The Kosor River, the very stream that brought greenery to the city, overflowed during a violent flood, eroding and collapsing a large section of the palace's protective walls. This geological breach paved the way for the allied forces of the Babylonians and Medes to swarm in. Massive fires consumed Nineveh, burning so intensely that they melted even the hardest mud bricks. The destruction was so absolute that for 2,000 years, the world completely forgot where Nineveh had once stood, until archaeologists unearthed the stone reliefs beneath mounds of earth in the 19th century. The wealthiest and most brutal city was erased by its own waters. Moving to the province of Asia in the Roman Empire, Ephesus in modern-day Turkey once boasted the Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, which was 4 times larger than the Parthenon in Athens. But architectural beauty was merely a facade for a massive banking system. Because the temple was considered sacred and inviolable, kings and merchants from across the globe deposited their entire fortunes there, entrusting the goddess with their safekeeping. Ephesus naturally became the largest treasury in Asia at that time. Furthermore, the city reaped enormous profits from religious tourism. The primary local industry was the casting of small silver shrines of the goddess Artemis to sell to pilgrims. This wealth created a society where faith and profit were one and the same. When the Apostle Paul arrived and preached that gods made by human hands were no gods at all, he unintentionally struck at the financial interests of the silversmiths' guild, led by Demetrius. A terrifying riot broke out in the city's great theater, a structure capable of seating 25,000 people. For 2 hours, the mob chanted the name of their goddess, but in reality, they were defending their wallets. Yet, the downfall of Ephesus did not come from a military invasion, but from nature itself. The city's harbor was gradually choked by silt over time, pushing the city further and further from the sea, and transforming the bustling port into a polluted swamp. As trade vanished, even the sanctity of the temple could not save the economy. Today, that colossal temple once filled with gold and silver is reduced to a single, solitary column standing in a marsh, a testament to the fact that wealth built on deception and spiritual profiteering will eventually be discarded by the natural world. While mighty empires like Babylon or Nineveh collapsed and dissolved into dust, Damascus in modern-day Syria holds an astonishing record. It is the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. The secret to this endurance lies not in walls of steel or elite armies, but in something more precious than gold in the heart of the desert. Water Damascus is a vibrant green island amidst a sea of parched sand. Thanks to the Barada River, it became an obligatory stop for every camel caravan carrying silk, spices, and aromatics from the east to the Mediterranean. If merchants attempted to bypass Damascus to evade taxes, they faced certain death from thirst. Damascus understood its unique value and transformed itself into a massive toll station for the ancient world. Its wealth was built on cunning. Instead of choosing to fight to the bitter end and be reduced to ashes by conquerors, the people of Damascus often chose to open their gates, pay tribute, and continue doing business under the new dynasty. They understood that money requires stability to circulate. The book of Ezekiel describes the markets of Damascus as being filled with wine from Helbon and premium white wool luxury goods that only the super-rich of that era could afford. The legacy of this enduring wealth is still present on the street called Straight mentioned in the Bible where the Apostle Paul once walked. This road is still in use after thousands of years, a testament to an urban planning vision based on commercial pragmatism. Damascus teaches us a lesson in humility and flexibility. Sometimes, bowing before a storm is the best way to keep your treasures from being swept away. About 40 kilometers to the north, Sidon stood as a sister city, but it possessed a completely different kind of gold mine. While Tyre dyed fabric, Sidon held the secret to a material that ancients regarded as a miracle: transparent glass. Sidonian artisans discovered that the white sand on their shores, when melted at extremely high temperatures with certain secret additives, transformed into a clear substance. In a world where every utensil was opaque, made of clay or metal, owning a glass cup that allowed one to see the color of the wine inside was the ultimate luxury. Sidon exported thousands of tons of glass products worldwide in exchange for immense wealth and deep political influence. However, Sidon's wealth came with a cultural virus. King Ethbaal of Sidon used his vast fortune to marry his daughter, Jezebel. to the king of Israel. This was more than just a marriage, it was a cultural merger. Jezebel brought gold and silver, but she also brought brutal pagan idols that corrupted the entire faith of a neighboring nation. Sidon used its money to corrupt souls. Jesus later used Sidon as an example regarding repentance. He stated that on the day of judgment, Sidon would be treated more leniently than the cities of Israel because they had sinned in ignorance. However, for those who know the truth yet still choose gold and silver, the sin is far heavier. Sidon reminds us that even peak technology, if not accompanied by a solid moral foundation, will only become a tool for mutual destruction. If there was ever a city that represented the arrogance of the financial elite, it was Laodicea in modern-day Turkey. In 60 C, a catastrophic earthquake leveled the region. While neighboring cities knelt to beg for financial aid from the Roman emperor, Laodicea sent a shocking message. "We are wealthy enough to rebuild everything ourselves. Do not trouble us with your help." Laodicea's wealth came from three sources: an extremely advanced banking industry, a monopoly on glossy black wool, and a medicinal eye salve famous throughout the empire. They had the best clothes, the best medicine, and vaults overflowing with gold. Yet, Laodicea possessed a geographical Achilles heel. They had no natural water source. Water had to be channeled from afar through open stone aqueducts. By the time the hot springs from Hierapolis reached Laodicea, the water was no longer hot enough for healing. By the time the cold water from Colossae reached them, it was no longer cool enough to drink. It became a lukewarm, brackish liquid full of mineral sediment that made anyone who tasted it for the first time want to vomit immediately. Jesus used this very characteristic to rebuke them in the book of Revelation. "Because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth." Laodicea believed money bought them self-sufficiency, but they failed to realize they were living in a state of useless complacency. Today, the ruined stone colonnades of Laodicea stand isolated in the wilderness, a testament that material wealth lacking spiritual purity is nothing more than a ridiculous illusion. Finally, we reach the pinnacle of prosperity in the Bible. Jerusalem under the reign of King Solomon. This was a place where the common laws of economics were shattered. The Book of 1 Kings records that silver in Jerusalem became as common as stones on the street. This meant the reserves were so vast that silver lost its scarcity value as a precious metal. Every year, more than 20 tons of pure gold flowed into the palace treasury. Solomon built a throne of ivory overlaid with fine gold and fashioned 200 massive golden shields just to decorate his palace walls. He owned a fleet of merchant ships, partnered with the Phoenicians, that sailed across the oceans to bring back exotic treasures like peacocks, ivory, and sandalwood. However, this brilliance concealed a terrifying darkness. To maintain the court's extravagant lifestyle, Solomon pressed 30,000 men into forced labor and imposed heavy taxes on the 12 districts of the nation. Walls overlaid with gold were erected by the sweat of the poor. The people saw the king's gold, silver, and jewels, but they saw hunger on their own dinner tables. Consequently, this golden empire shattered just days after Solomon passed away. Prosperity without social justice is like a house built on sand. It may glitter in the sun, but it will collapse the moment the winds of discontent blow. The lesson of Solomon is Jerusalem is the costliest of all. Wealth without mercy will sooner or later turn to ash. Reflecting on our journey through the 10 wealthiest capitals of the Bible, we see a brutal law of time. Gold and silver never truly disappear. They only change hands. The gold of the Assyrians was plundered by the Babylonians. The Persians took from the Babylonians, and the Greeks took it all. Money is merely a set of numbers circulating between the hands of conquerors. If you were to fly to these locations today, what would you see? The harbor of Ephesus is a swamp. Babylon is a mound of mud. Nineveh is nothing but heaps of rubble. The highest walls have fallen. The greatest treasuries are empty. But something strange remains. The prophecies, the moral messages, and the teachings of the Bible written by those who were often poor, exiled, without armies, and without gold have survived intact for thousands of years. Jesus' rebuke to Laodicea, or Nahum's prophecy against Nineveh, are still read in thousands of languages every day. True wealth does not lie in what we hoard in safes, but in what we leave behind in the human soul. Empires built of stone and gold have vanished, but words built on truth endure forever. As night falls over the moss-covered ruins of these billion-dollar cities, one final question echoes. Are you building your life on the brittle gold bars of this world, or on the unshakable foundation of eternal values?